So I was having breakfast with Joyce, my mentor of 20 years, and I was so excited. I'm buzzing with excitement, telling her about my big goal for the year. I'm going to launch the Just One Pivot podcast and the 5-minute Friday newsletter this year. That was my big goal. She listened as she always does, and then in her ever so sweet yet pointed Joyce voice, she puts down her teacup, looks at me straight in the eye, and says, "So you've been talking about doing this for as long as I've known you, right? My question is, what is different now?" What? I've been talking about this for 20 years, really? All the way home, all I could think was, what's different now? What's different now? Well, that was the question, folks.
Welcome to Just One Pivot, where a tiny shift in perspective can change everything. Whether you're feeling stuck or looking to accelerate your momentum, Just One Pivot brings a spark to jumpstart your next best move. Join Dr. Maria Keckler as she dives into inspiring stories, thought-provoking questions, and fascinating science that will help you pivot towards a life and work you love. Let's get started.
Joyce is what my husband likes to call a spark. And if you've ever had a good mentor, you already know what I'm talking about. Great mentors don't really tell you what to do. They just prime the pump. They inspire a mental shift, a tiny, tiny little perspective shift that ends up being the one pivot that changes everything. And that's what Just One Pivot is all about. It's about the tiny shift that starts in the 6 inches between our ears, because when something shifts there, trust me, everything else begins to fall into place. And that's why I am finally here, because when Joyce asked me what's different now, I realized that starting and launching Just One Pivot into the world is not about me, myself, or I. And it's not about that bully inside my head whispering things like, "Who do you think you are? You don't have time. You'll hate your voice on tape, trust me." Or someone else has already said all this. It's not fresh. It's not new. It's not going to be perfect. Blah, 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 blah. Well, what has shifted is that finally launching Just One Pivot is not about me. It's about you. It's my imperfect and perfectly imperfect love letter to all the mentors who poured wisdom into my life and the mentees who have let me pour wisdom into theirs. One lesson that I also learned from Joyce is that everyone is a mentor and everyone needs a mentor. So consider Just One Pivot also my love letter to you, the mentor, the mentee, all wrapped into one. So in the next few minutes, I want to kick things off by sharing just 3 things. First, I want to tell you the story behind Just One Pivot and how it started and how it's relevant to you. Second, I want to leave you with a gift of a question, just like Joyce did, to spark an idea, either to get you unstuck if you're stuck, or maybe accelerate your momentum forward in whatever area of your life. And finally, I want to share how you can join the conversation so that we can get to know each other, and also because I don't want this to be just a monologue. So let's start with the story. The seed of Just One Pivot was planted and nurtured and watered at my family's kitchen table between 1972 and 1975 in Mexico City, the city where I was born. Now, most evenings after dinner, Dad did 2 things. First, he would pull out his guitar and he serenaded us with his favorite ballads from his favorite composer, Mexican composer, Agustin Lara. Then he would pull the wooden chess set, and it was time for the nightly chess lesson. Now, this wasn't just kids' chess. Believe me, it was serious chess, strategy books and all. He even convinced the school principal to sponsor a tournament, which I am proud to say I won as a 2nd grader, beating some 6th grader with a funny name I can't remember. My sister, Karina, also has bragging rights because she was able to beat one of Dad's co-workers who demanded una revancha or a rematch every time that we saw him. Now, Dad didn't just let us win. So needless to say, a lot of the chess training involved losing, which has come in very, very handy for all the failures that would eventually come. But I digress. I hated losing so very much. And when I could see that defeat was imminent, all I wanted to do was, just quit. But Dad would have none of it. Instead, he would force me back to the chair and he would reach across the board, pick up one of my chess pieces, and with a smile, showed me a new move. Some clever new move, a queen's gambit, or a seeming retreat of a knight that then would eventually check the king. And just like that, I was back in the game. I could see a path forward. And then he would look at me and say, remember, just one pivot can change the momentum of the game. I must have heard him say that 100 times. But it wasn't until a decade later. This was 4 years after he died from a brain tumor, and when I was just struggling with depression as an immigrant working a job I absolutely hated in Los Angeles, that I remember those words again. And it hit me. It hit me in a way that I had never experienced before. It was the realization that Dad wasn't just teaching me how to play the game of chess. He was actually teaching me, my sister, how to play the game of life. And that realization shifted something in me, and almost instantaneously, everything began to change because it triggered a question. And the question was, what is my next best move? What's my next best move? So over the next 30, 40 years, asking that question has been one of the most important parts of not staying stuck for a long time. It has opened areas of courage, boldness, clarity. It has taken me from despair to having hope, to having creativity, to becoming a business owner, to becoming an executive coach, if you can believe that, to building a life and the relationships I love, becoming a writer, writing a book, going back to school, and eventually becoming Dr. Maria Keckler. But the truth is that that everything started with a mental shift that began with a single question. And so if you can remember one thing out of this episode, I want it to be this. Asking the question triggers the pivot, but the question is also the pivot. So in the next few episodes, what I want to do is I want to share the rest of the story. I also want to share the stories of those who have inspired me and of those who have allowed me to inspire them and their own pivots. But for now, I want to leave you with that gift, the gift of a question, just as Joyce gifted me with a question. No matter where you are today, whether it's in school, at a relationship, in business, in life, shifting from disempowering questions is key. Instead of asking, why me, or that's not fair, or we've always done this the same way and nothing has ever changed, you can shift to asking, what's my next best move? Because when you do that, you turn from having the mentality of a victim with no possibilities to becoming a creative person with endless possibilities. You step from just talking about what concerns you and worry you, and now you step into your center of control where you actually have agency. So let me close with an invitation to join the conversation. When you go to justonepivot.com, you can subscribe to get the 5-minute version of this podcast. It's my love letter to you. And then you can email me directly. You can tell me what you think. You can ask me questions. And you can also download the resources that I will share along the way, because I want you to have forward momentum from this point forward. Remember, just one pivot can change the momentum of the game. And whatever your game is right now, whether it's as a student, as a professional, as a mother, as a father, as an entrepreneur in work or life, what is your next best move? Thank you for listening. I'm so excited that you spent some time with me, and I can wait to share the next story with you. Talk to you soon.